Nabi, if we can wrap up with this thought, unless also you have questions for each other. I think one, and I agree with your analysis on this. I think one of those rights, one of the issues, one of the core issues that has to be resolved is Palestine, right, and the rights of Palestinians. And this is the issue that the U.S. has avoided now for decades. It's the issue that successive Israeli governments have avoided. Um, and and that's so we constantly we've had U.S. policy built around the idea that uh, the question of Palestinians, what to do with the people of Palestine, what to do gets deferred endlessly, and for a while the Trump administration, when it began to conceive the Abraham Accords, basically tried to negotiate around the Palestinians, right? You sort of negotiate around that question and make it something to be contained. Um, and Biden largely kept that. Let's remember how the Biden administration really tried to. One of their main goals was to expand the Abraham Accords to Saudi Arabia, the elusive Saudi-Israel deal that they spent years on. So, if I can ask you all, and I think Stephen might have had to leave us at this point, but if I can ask you all. For any thoughts on that, on where, and especially, and if you don't want to delve into the political analysis of it, but the coverage, are there ways to keep this issue, this core question in the coverage? Daniel, do you want to weigh in on that?
Well, I think something we should keep in mind is the changing public opinion in the US, which is not a surprise to any one of us. But the Pew poll recently put it really starkly. 60% of US adults now have an unfavorable view of Israel. And in both political parties, um, the majority of people under the age of 50, so I guess you could call that young people plus, now consider Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu unfavorably, which means that these are the future Congress people, these are the future senators, these are the future decision makers of the U.S. Um, and from the view from Israel, I think it's also important to know that Israelis and Israeli officials are concerned about this trend, and yet there is a disconnect. There was a recent poll here that showed that around 80% of Jewish Israelis believe that after the Iran war ends, that relations between Israel and the U.S. and public opinion will improve. And I don't think that you're seeing that bear out. Even the Gaza war, right, is not on everyone's screens every day, and yet this Pew poll from late March showed what it showed. I spoke to the foreign policy advisor of Netanyahu and asked him, "What does Israel plan to do about this?" And essentially, the talking point is, it's concerning, but there's we're paying a price for what Israel feels is necessary. And I think we should look into the future, into the end of this year when Israel holds elections. The big question is, will Netanyahu be re-elected? And if not, will there be what will the new government's policy be? I don't think it will be taking up a new policy toward Palestinians. But if it does anything differently, whether it's emphasizing regional alliances, whether it's acknowledging some compassion for human suffering, instead of being the neighborhood bully, uh, that might be one slight change that we'll see what that brings.
Thank you. Heidi, do you have any closing thoughts on that, on this theme? It's a very open-ended theme, but
It is. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, what you were asking before about the kind of long-term consequences and stability, I think Syria is really experimenting that with that right now, right? It was a driver of instability in the region for a very long time. I think there is a lot of momentum both internally and also externally to make sure that that doesn't happen again. But yeah, we should also keep in mind that Syria is potentially a new front for these expanding campaigns by Israel. They've made it very clear that they're trying to establish this presence in Kenitra. We had the bombings of downtown Damascus last summer, which there's really nothing to stop that from happening again. The Israelis have a very antagonistic relationship to the new Syrian authorities, which being here and living here, it's sort of inexplicable in a way, right? The relationship that they have is that they have a government here that doesn't have the capacity, partly because it was bombed out in the immediate fall of the regime. The new government here lost most of its military capacity. But you've got a government here that isn't really interested in antagonizing Israel, and Israel is very interested in antagonizing the new Syrian authorities. And so, yeah, it remains to be seen what actually happens here. But the occupation of land in Kenitra is a serious domestic problem and could become a driver of instability, right? There's a large part of the Syrian population that is incredibly angry about that. They want to see their government do something about that. But at this point, the government doesn't have the sort of the capacity to. But that can become a domestic issue very, very quickly and could become another driver of instability or to open up a new front. And we see them constantly almost making attempts to sort of appease the Israelis by not pushing back against that, by stopping smuggling operations across the Lebanese-Syrian border. I mean, I got an alert on my phone in the last half an hour saying that they've arrested dozens of what they call like Hezbollah cells inside Syria, which they say were coming here seeking to destabilize. But they're trying to show at every opportunity like we are not a problem, but it's not necessarily leading to anything that would create further stability here inside Syria or to stop that from becoming another front.
Okay, thank you all. This is an enlightening conversation. Thank you to the Overseas Press Club for hosting us. And hopefully, I don't know, I'm trying to think if there's some hopeful note we can end on. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but thank you all for joining today.